Tonight, on a very special episode of the Jaunty Mantis, we've got Karl again.
Hello, it's me. We're doing it again. I can only assume popular acclaim or outcry from the fan community or something. I don't know.
Of the 18 people that follow us on YouTube, no one has complained as of yet, so there's
Perfect.
that.
Good. Yeah. That's in terms of my general interactions with the public. Um, 18 people not complaining is a pretty good. Yeah, I'm really driving up my averages here. Yeah.
Nice. Let's see. Just checking the emails real quick to see if we had
Of
actually
course, of
had any.
course.
Oh, I had an email from you.
You did. You did.
Did you see my response?
Because I did. So to let folks in on the joke is I don't like Modifius as a system. I don't like their 2D20 system in the slightest. I went on a trolling campaign for about a year and a half, I think, going on to their announcements on social media, and they'd be like, "Oh, hey, check it out! We're releasing the Dune game," and I'd ask them, "Are you going to be putting this in the Modifius 2D20 system?" And they had, of course, respond with, "Yes, we are," very enthusiastically. And my response to that was always, "That's a damn shame." Um, because man, I just haven't had a good experience in it. I know some people love it, but I just I can't do it. Um,
I think the
and
Dune RPG, Dune Adventures in the Imperium, is my favorite iteration of it that I have played, and
that
just strictly on the shielded knife fighting. The way that those mechanics work with that is to me a thing of beauty, and then the fact that everything scales up from there. So if you are doing like a full on like army versus army, it kind of works in the same way of like maneuvering your blade into their vulnerable area to strike. If you're doing intrigue, it's kind of the same thing. I think it works really well. And we also played with
right.
if you're listening, Lauren, who ran that game, is a killer DM.
You'd
Like
have to be.
the DC numbers that she throws and the amount of threat she generates and her willingness to like just twist the knife while also being really interested in story is such a refreshing combination. In fact, in our last game session she was running, which was last week, I said, we are just going to start calling you the Beast now. Which is also nice because she cuts my hair every once in a while because she used to be a hairdresser or hairstylist. And
Right.
so if anyone ever compliments me on my haircut, I can say, oh, thanks. I got it cut by the Beast.
Yeah. Um, well, and the Beast will always occupy a special place in my heart due to Vampire the Masquerade and
Well, you
Requiem and
know,
whatever else, of course.
monster I am, lest monster I become.
Indeed. Yeah, so I guess and maybe it's a discussion for another day on Modiphius. To circle back to it
Oh, yeah, we're going to get Mark
is,
on, and I'm going to full on like bait
oh
you
yeah,
two into a verbal boxing match.
perfect. Because I think we could go at each other. Because in true to form, Mark and I agree on like 95% of anything, and like we will come into very loud disagreements on that final 5%. Um, and his leaning into things like powered by the apocalypse, and then just trying with every bit of his soul to make the Star Trek 2D20 like be viable. I respect where he was coming from. I too am a fan of lost causes. um but oh god, it was just such a disaster, and really like lining out the sins and transgressions that happened there. That's a fun teaser. So
But there's such a rich
we'll
world of IP you're cutting yourself off from if you don't engage with Modifius. You can't play the homeworld role playing game. You can't play the Conan. Well, they don't have that license anymore. You
oh, did
can't.
they lose Conan?
Yeah.
Oh, I,
Yeah.
I, yeah, I was unironically a fan of it. Like, I thought that the threat and momentum went in just fine, and made like it worked with Conan in a way that it didn't work with Star Trek. Um,
Well, I will say their
and
books are like laid out in index, like the first edition of any of her books. Like if you have a tier for indexing, where I'm trying to think of what the top tier of indexing would be, like a linked PDF. Probably it's probably some new D&D book for 5e or something. Like that would be top tier. Bottom tier would be probably riffs. And then the way they're indexed and sorted, like the way you have to get adjacent rules, is two steps up from riffs.
can I propose what the one step up from Riffs is?
Oh yeah, I'd love to hear it.
Is fucking root, man. Like this, the why I don't understand why Powered by the Apocalypse is so like, just to give you, and I'm showing it. I will narrate what I'm doing here. I'm showing Jesse on my camera here the index for a 255 page book of Root. Is just that. It's one page, and it's not organized by anything like the rules. It's just random ass whatever the fuckery all throughout this. Like it doesn't even give you all the factions that are in the woodlands. It doesn't give you anything about like what a combat movement is in the index, and give you any convenient anything. It makes me mad in a way that it's really hard to articulate. So
Well, have you ever
anyhow.
tried to run Blades in the Dark?
No, I have not. I'm interested in it, of course, because I think Blades in the Dark is super duper cool and that's atmospheric and everything else. But no,
I got
and I
one I
probably
want to
won't.
do. Jesse reached over to his bookshelf, here's the audio narration, and held up a copy of Brinkwood, Blood of Tyrants,
Oh,
which says on the
fun.
back, Brinkwood, Blood of Tyrants is a forged-in-the-dark tabletop role-playing game about building a rebellion that will overthrow the blood-soaked vampires that oppress and dominate your world. The vampires are literally capitalism.
Oh, of course. Okay. Did
Yeah.
Brennan Lee Mulligan write any of this, or did Mark have a hand?
No, but it's
Oh,
very much
oh,
in that vibe. You are a
yeah.
brigand, a commoner radicalized by tragedy, who has decided to forsake their old life and flee into the woods to plot a rebellion. The Bloody Isles are your home, a kingdom on the brink of open revolt against the vampiric nobles and factory lords who rule over it. All it will take is a single spark. Your spark. Whether you're robbing from the rich and giving to the poor, or assassinating vampires and drinking their blood, every move will take you closer to your goal, liberating your home from the vampiric scourge of blood, rent, and exploitation.
Mm, delightful.
Yeah.
I mean, so it is Blades in the Dark, but with vampires, right? Sort
Yeah.
of in between that and like Eat the Reich or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Cool.
I'm excited about
Oh
that.
man. Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun.
And you don't feel bad about punching Nazis in the game. So, like,
No.
die, fascist vampire. I will say, too, this is just on a little RPG thing. We got to a conversation in my Sunday night game last night that was, it was like my friend said, oh, I could run a one shot of that because I was going over some of the inconsistencies of Rift's Chaos Earth, which is the apocalypse that brought rifts to Earth. It says on the cover it's a complete role-playing game, but then it's like missing a basic gear section, and like so it feels it's very slim, feels very phoned in, and he was like, "Yeah, I'll do it as a challenge." I'm like, "Excellent," but I was like, "Or you could just run riffs." So today I decided when I got home from work to use my Riffs automated character sheet version 8, which is a very complicated multi-sheet Excel spreadsheet, which for some reason I enjoy, and try and make a combat cyborg. But I just decided on a whim, I named him This Machine.
Are you going to play this machine as though he is Bert Kreischer, the stand-up comedian,
I don't
if you're familiar with him?
I don't know him.
Good. Never mind. Scratch that. Bert Kreischer's a piece of trash. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
Um,
No, This Machine, my secondary skills I picked for him are playing musical instrument, banjo and guitar, and singing, because this machine kills fascists.
Okay, all right. Yes, I see the direction. Beautiful. Are you planning on doing any theatrical performances with this character?
Oh yeah, I'd love to sing a song about putting down the dead boys who deserve to be
Perfect.
dead. Don't have to roll on the
Well,
table about how that character feels about the coalition states, because they're fascists, and this machine kills fascists.
um, yeah. So what you want to talk about tonight? Just
Well,
shoot it about various games or whatever. See,
now that we've got the
but yeah,
banter over, you had
yeah.
mentioned an interesting idea about. Okay, I'm going to say this, and I think you, audience, you might be thinking of all the references, but Karl is in an improv group,
No, yeah.
and
I am that toxic guy.
he has
Yeah.
not once asked me to come to a show. So, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah, we've only had a couple of three showcases, and I get very self-conscious about being like, because I know the memes, right? Improv and like doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which is also something I do, and CrossFit, which is not something I do. Like those are all everyone. You will always know when your friends join those kinds of hobbies because they'll tell everyone about it, right? Um, and I'm just like I have such an issue that I think runs counter to how much I enjoy doing storytelling in D&D. I just get really self-conscious about being like, "Hey guys, do you want to come watch my improv show?" Um, and and I don't know why, but that's just is what it is.
hey, I mean, like, I revealed a little of the backstory of my life when we were playing Call of Cthulhu this Sunday. And
Yeah.
I mentioned a reference to a collection of essays about dolls by the poet Charles Baudelaire that I read in high school. The other thing I did in high school, because I was a theater magnet kid, was I was obsessed with creating modern archetypes for commedia dell'arte, which is very much improv, where you put on the persona of the mask. So, like, yeah,
Yeah.
no, I get it. Like, I,
Yeah. Yeah, there's been a lot of good stuff that I think I've gotten from it. Mostly in just shifting my focus from um, well, my other form of storytelling that I enjoy, like really taken in is like I mentioned before, pro wrestling. I think that's a lot of fun, and before getting kind of like at least introduced to the idea of just hybrid models of improv, like I always went into games, or not always, but I frequently went into games like trying to get my own shit in, right? Like there was that time of my role playing player development where I was min maxing and I was really trying to make effective or efficient characters, whatever. And then I got away from that because I stopped being a neckbeard edgelord. Um, but it still was like I was still trying to put myself first as a player, and it's been the last what year and a half or so that I've been doing this extra work. I am getting away from that. And I think that I think that's a really worthwhile skill for everybody that's in the tabletop role playing game hobby to have. I think it probably comes in a little more naturally to some people. Um, like in our Call of Cthulhu game, all three of you guys as players are just really generous with each other. But I had to learn how to do that. And uh, yeah, if there's anybody out there in the world that is looking to improve their chops at it at tabletop role playing games and getting better at that overall and increasing everybody's enjoyment in learning anything about improv, I think is really really worthwhile. So that's kind of my intro anyway.
so, I know there's been a lot of discussion for a long time in the RPG community about using the concept of yes and, which is borrowed from improv, And that's one of the things that I always try to do, at least as a DM. I hope I'm instinctually doing it as a player, but turn taking and that sort of thing, coming from some of the groups I play with where some of the character or players are more shy, is like trying to figure out what I can do as my character to give them a moment in the spotlight is really important to me.
Yes. Something something that I've labored over a bit is how do you pull in those shyer players, whether you're the DM or the player, because of course you want to build up your other players at the table, or if you're the DM, you want to prioritize building up your players and giving them really fun moments or whatever it is. And that can be a challenge whenever you've got a player who is naturally shy. I've not come up with any really good ways to pull that kind of person into the game or into the story. Yeah. What do you think? Have you found a good method of doing that? I think it's a trick.
One of the things, I mean, like, it's one of those things that I think you have to like be willing to commit to a multiple session arc as another player at the table. You have to be willing for it to be a process, I think, of a couple sessions, because the first thing you have to do is you have to, I think, approach them in character about what is their backstory or what's important to them. Like, especially if they're uncertain about their character. One example I could think of is we were playing a kind of a long-term Forgotten Realms campaign, and I was playing a Warforged warlock who was like a one-off creation of some crazy wizard in Kalimsham, and his name was Harrow. And one of the players in the party played a cleric, and so I spent a lot of time trying to get him to engage with like asking like, "What is a soul? Do I have a soul? Like, what happens to your soul when you," like, just ask him all these questions to try and draw out that aspect. I think you just got to be willing to keep asking questions, and I just think that's generally good player advice. Like, as like a number rule is just ask lots of questions. Ask lots of questions of your game master. Ask lots of questions of the other players. Be curious about the world and the other people in it. And then you have the things you can start using as your building blocks to do more and more.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I'll piggyback on like from our Call of Cthulhu this weekend, the chatting with Mark's character and hitting him with leading questions of like, tell me about the first time you experienced a ghost or whatever, and how that impacted you. I think those kinds of leading questions get you places, and I mean that is almost entirely a skill that I picked up from doing these improv classes. Is if you're going to ask a question, it's got to be leading, and then it's like we're trying to get bigger and bigger responses out of your players or out of your compatriots or whatever else. And yeah, I think all those little tricks, like continuing to build up your fellow players and being interested in what's happening, engaging in even just a small modicum of active listening and being present in the scene that is happening at your table. Like all of these are like all that stuff is taken off of improv, and they're just good habits for players to generally be in. And it's baffling to me when players don't exhibit those characteristics. Um, yeah, I just don't know why some people are the way they are. And yeah, okay, that led me on a whole rabbit trail. So anyhow, what are you thinking about?
I just think another general, and you can tell me if this isn't like related to improv at all, is that, well, probably it is, but like I think you have to like be willing to think your character's vulnerability is cool, or the details of your character's life, like weird little things. I mean, obviously, like I steal when I go off on little rants with Justin, a lot of times that's my character in the Call of Cthulhu game. I'm stealing little bits from my own life because improbably when I rolled that character, he came out with an education stat of 80, despite being like very clearly a not a college educated guy. So I figure he just reads a lot while he's waiting on a call for, whatever next. They found somebody dead in an apartment and need it cleaned up, his day job. And I just, I think being willing to throw those out is modeling the behavior and giving other people some of those hooks that they can engage with you at the table at.
Yeah. Like one of those core concepts in the improv world is yeah, like of course you have to run this balance between doing a game bit and then grounding your characters. And like when you make the shift between short form and long form improvs, then you're actually having to get away from doing bit games. And what I kind of mean by that is we're all familiar with Whose Line Is It Anyway, which, Drew Carey comes in and he gives various short form improv comedy prompts for his players, Colin Mockery and the other one, and then whoever else would happen to be on the stage at the time. Like they would take those games and they'd make a little show out of it, and then boom, and that's kind of what short form is playing those games. And usually in your story or your show or your showcase or whatever, you essentially have a DM character that is serving as the middle point between your actors and the audience. So they're fulfilling that role of Drew Carey of getting figuring out what the games are, putting the prompts to the actors, and then filtering through the audience feedback. As things get more advanced, though, you start moving to longer forms of improv, and like D&D and tabletop role playing is just probably like way up here, pinnacle long form, because we're trying to sustain this energy. We're trying to through an entire narrative arc, right? And that takes a really fucking long time. Um, the thing that I've picked up here recently that I'm very excited about bringing out in both my character work and in on the at the table and in my GMing is the way to make any given scene or even a story arc, chapter, whatever, like to give it more sustaining power is you make it more and more relatable to your audience. So even though we might be doing on stage, it's we're having to deal with the unicorn black market trade on Mars, right? If we can have two characters in that who maybe are a little too passive aggressive at each other and use like weaponized like therapy language at each other, like that is relatable to a lot of the audience, because we've all kind of we've at least had some experience with like toxic folks in our life that do stuff like that to gaslight us, or our friends or whatever. So we can kind of your audience go like looks at that kind of relationship and go, oh, well, that's like I can get on board with that, and I can relate to one or two of these characters, or they both suck or whatever. And I think that in role playing, it is easy to how to put this. It is easy to be so excited about wanting to get your own shit in, to get your own badass moments, that you forget about enhancing your other players. And especially if you like with me in the past, we talked about it. I kind of had a toxic group that I kind of started with, and it took me a while to figure out and like kind of move through various groups and interpersonal dynamics where it didn't feel like I didn't feel the pressure that I was going to get shit on in a session, and that involves cutting people out of your gaming group and doing all that. And yeah, you can't neglect those things, because if you just got a shit group, you got a shit group. And then And then when you've got a good group, you can get away from having these habits of like, oh, I don't want to be collaborative. Why would I be collaborative? That will mean less fun for me. But really, the coming around on the idea that the more you collaborate with your players and your GM, the more fun everybody has, and that's kind of the fucking goal, you know?
Yeah, I mean, like at the end of the day, we are playing a game, and I generally try to think of games as fun. I was just thinking of an example actually about the yes and. I can tell you a little RPG yarn.
Ooh, please do.
So I actually like my first gaming group in Oklahoma. I found from an internet bar in Ho Chi Minh City through Meetup. And there was a group that was looking for people for an Exalted campaign they were playing. And Exalted is like hands down my favorite setting, despite not
Yes.
being super anime like obsessed. Like I just love,
Yeah.
I love that crazy mashup of like the Odyssey and Journey to the West, because I'm going to the classical roots of the whole thing. Like I love the cosmology it creates and suggests, like everything about Exalted. Huge fan, except the rules. So I join up with this group, and like we've all got different play styles. They're decent guys. Nobody's a huge ass. But at one point, I think we were like trying to go to the land of this Death Lord, and it had this enchantment around his land that like any living creature that entered it, the barrier would die, right? Except us, we're exalted. We have demigod power. So we're like, it's really far across to like a frozen wasteland to get to his palace, because we want to go like have a word with this dude and try and see if we can't, use demigod powered chicanery to fuck him up. And so my character was a sorcerer, and like we spent days doing these elaborate rituals to summon a type of demon called an agata, I think it is. It's like a giant dragonfly, and you can ride them as mounts, right? So I'm like, this is a demon. It's not really a living thing. And like we telegraphed to the DM, we're doing this to get mounts that are proof against this. So we do this whole ritual, we do this whole scene, we get on the mounts, and like we start flying, and we cross the board, and he's like, and your mounts immediately die and start falling out of the sky. And I'm like, at that, I was actually legitimately one of the more frustrated at the table moments I've ever had. Because like my character is like a genius with like massive occult knowledge and like divine powered magic that makes him supernally knowledgeable in this subject area. And the fact that didn't work, I was just like, I think I said like, have you ever heard of yes and? Like,
Sure.
and he responded, have you ever heard of realistic consequences? And I'm like,
Oh, that's not a good response. That's
I mean, like different strokes, different school of thought. Like, I'm not trying to talk shit about this guy. Like, he was our forever GM, ran lots of games, had a reasonably good time in like most of them. But it was just one of these moments where I think that impulse in me to be like, let's just, let's not actually like play like we're playing old school D&D with a gotcha GM.
right.
Right. I've done that. It was fun. And I will say, like with Shadow Dark, I do like a high lethality game, but I like it when everybody's on board, and because of the story beats and situations that creates.
Yeah. The To me, the it's kind of the consent of everybody at the table is something that should take forefront in the DM's mind. Just like if we're going to do a horror game, like you as the DM, you don't spring that on your players. If you want to do a hyper realistic game, one, I don't know why you're doing Exalted, but um if we want some grindhouse of a physics engine where we've really defined out things like whatever terminal velocity is, and this is the laden speed of a giant demonic dragonfly, then like everyone should go into that game expecting that sort of thing with those sorts of consequences. And every DM's allowed to make bad choices, bad calls, and nobody's perfect, as it were. But I would usually rather, as the DM, err on the side of like having your characters do something neat and cool and fun than trying to like drag them down using DM power. I think some of my issues with something like Modifius end up being the meta currency in that system and how that influences the way that the game is structured and played. Um,
Yeah, threat. So one of the meta currencies, if you're unfamiliar listeners with Modifius, there is basically, I think, what, two main meta currencies. Momentum, which is generated by success and cool stuff you do and extra hits on your die rolls, and then threat, which is a thing that the GM gets based on bad die rolls or based on you buying extra dice from
yeah,
their pool.
bartering.
And threat, I think that what you're saying is threat can feel really adversarial.
Yeah. Well, like adversarial, yes. Also unnecessary. Um, because like does the DM as the person like sitting behind the screen, do they really need like some kind of like physical mountain representation of like their ability to fuck their players if they really decide to? Because at any point rocks can fall and kill the whole party, right? I don't need a mechanical justification for it. And like and and maybe some of this is just my own experience with that system, like watching as my DM compiles this like mountain of threat while the rest of us we're just barely scraping by trying to get through a freaking whatever it was, a fight with Klingons or some shit. I don't even know what those are, but we were fighting them and like trying to get through that, and I'm just watching this thing like rack up, and it just reminds me of my own credit card debt, which takes me out of the game, right? Like I'm gonna have to pay for this at some point, and I'm not gonna have a good time doing that.
I think
And so that's
one of the things that's really important when a GM has like a spender meta currency to trigger their own things. I'm trying to think of what are some games that do that. The Fantasy Flight Star Wars, I believe, has one. The transform all of the Essence 20 Hasbro license game, Transformers
yes.
and My Little Pony and Power Rangers and GI Joe, they all have like story points that the GM like starts an encounter with. I think a really good rule of thumb, which is actually, I think it's the best of intentions that lead to that mountain of threat, is you don't want to be seen as a dick. And so you don't spend it on little stuff. And so
Mm,
it piles up and then you're like, oh yeah, I've got this mountain of threat. I need to use it. I think the good rule of thumb is like use it often and
yeah.
like
Uh,
just to
yeah,
increase the tension a little bit.
I would tend to agree with that. And I think that if you've got that, like those things all fairly well integrated into your play style, then it probably feels a little less I don't know, unnatural. Um, like I hate it whenever game mechanics take me out of the moment of playing the game. Um, and that was my experience there. And I tend to move towards systems that immerse me more and more. And to tie it back to the original idea, the whole like getting immersed in the character or your setting or whatever, like that's what really sells and makes good improv, like where everyone's having a good time. I don't know, I've done what almost a half dozen showcases at this point now. I'm still very new to the whole thing. Um, like the best times that I've had are when I got immersed in the story of what we were doing. Um, and then I'm just really like I'm playing the game or I'm trying to ground the characters in a way to like either make my other actor that I'm with, like I'm trying to break them a lot of times. Because I think I'm very, very clever and very, very funny. So, that has to shine through, right? But it's just playing through a scene, playing through a game, and like I like the crossover that has with tabletop games, um, because yeah, like I could honestly sit down and just listen for as long as like you and Adam and Mark wanted to just like in character ramble about um like the discussion of like if ghosts are real, and Adam's constantly arguing that no, there's got to be a rational explanation, and then Mark's arguing like, yeah, but you saw the Electra ghost, man, you gotta, like, we come on, we gotta face some realities here. Like, I could listen to that all fucking day because it's hilarious, and I agree with everybody who is involved in that conversation. Like, yeah, it's fantastic.
How much in improv and you'll probably see the pretty obvious connection to RPGs with this one. How much preparation is involved before the moment you're on stage?
You have like whatever, an hour. It's maybe ish that you usually go into your situations kind of knowing, if you're doing short form, like what games you're going to play. And if you're doing a longer form, you kind of know what your intro is going to be, like who's going to be the guy starting the long form session. Our most recent show that we did, we knew that my partner Donald was going to be going out on stage, and he's going to be starting this. I mean, it's essentially a revolving door of scenes, right? We have six people total in our group. You start with person A and B. So Donald, and in this case me, are one and two, and then like they go for 3 or 4 minutes of talking and fleshing out the scene, establishing what the world is, and then person A rotates and person C rotates in, and then person B and C go. Person B rotates C and D, D and E. E and F, and then at the very end, person A rotates back in to kind of tie everything together, and you jazz hands, and um, everything makes sense in the universe, and everyone laughs. And that's kind of how that goes. Like, really going into it, you really only know like who's going to be your lead guy, and what questions they're going to ask of the audience, and then the audience provides that, and then off we pop. It's honestly, by comparison, going into a gaming session that I'm DMing, I've I prepared way more for that than I have for any of the improv I've ever done. Um, the by orders of magnitude, I would estimate, probably, if you count the class, I'm done 8 hours of prep for a 1 hour showcase in an improv class. And that'll probably be some level of how that trend continues. Whereas like any given like Call of Cthulhu game, I'm usually prepping. I've about got it hammered down to about an hour and a half for every 45 minutes of gameplay, the roundabout. When I have groups like y'all, that really lowers that. Like, I think my prep for this weekend was about 10 minutes, for what did we end up doing? 3 hours, something like that.
Yeah.
And the more that I can trust my players to like carry the stuff and like make decisions and not try to derail things and do all that, basically the more time you guys give me on the front end, which I appreciate, because it lets me go do other stuff like paint this ridiculous number of Necrons, and play Expedition 33, which I just picked up, which is a fantastic game. And yeah, that's nice.
Cool. Yeah, I was going to lead that question as into like if you had to come up with like a checklist of best practices or principles for as a player or GM using improv, what would that be? But then I realized that's basically just the GM principles in every Powered by the Apocalypse book.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
question answered by books on my shelf that I forgot about until I
Indeed.
started setting up that question.
Another real good one that's out there is Keeper's Secrets for Call of Cthulhu. They released a tiny little booklet that is essentially the same thing from Powered by the Apocalypse. It just kind of like goes into a little bit more detail about things like gaming consent, and keeping lines of communication open with your players. Um, which I think is, I mean, I don't know. I feel like us having these conversations here, uh, we've I've talked about this concept for 20 minutes to you, but I don't think that you can understate it enough. Like we're doing something. Like, mutual storytelling is a trust activity. Um, Much in the same way that whenever I go out and do grappling and wrestling, my training partners, like we have to have a level of trust that we're not always trying to murder each other, right? I have to trust my partners with my body and vice versa. If you don't have that trust, that completely alters the training environment. And when you go into a D&D game and you don't trust your other players or you don't trust the DM or whatever, then you can't optimize your fun. You're not doing the task efficiently, correctly, and I would submit safely. Um, and so like we have to have these doors open. We have to have these conversations. We just we have to have an eye towards like consenting to what everybody is doing here at the table, and that is true in improv as well. Like I tumbled through a window frame to start out my last improv showcase, and my partner Donald, he was like, "Oh, I'm not." Like he wasn't sure about how rough he should be with me. And we had a brief conversation about it of like, man, like you can grab me by the neck and choke slam me. I don't care. I know how to fall. And yeah, and that's fine. Hopefully, the next showcase where it will be even funnier and more slapstick, Ernest P. Worrell. Um, but I appreciated that he pulled back, not knowing how far he could go with my body. Um, and I think that that's great for gaming. That if you don't know how far you can go with a person's like what they're comfortable with from a story perspective, psychologically, let's say, that you pull back and you don't do stupid shit.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Well, I hope. I think that's about all the questions I have for it. Do you have any final thoughts
Great.
to wrap it up on improv? We talked
Yeah.
about trust. We talked about like vulnerability. We talked about being asking lots of questions, and yes, and of
Yeah.
course.
Yeah. Yes. And I think probably the the hallmarks of a person who is a good role player, they already coincide with somebody who is a good improv player. And it's why we see a lot of like professional D&D right now that I say professional, but you know what I mean, like things like Dropout, Dimension 20, like that those are that's content that's being put out by professional actors, professional improvers, voice actors, etc. Um, for good reason. Like these things, like the skills that you learn in one buttress the other. And if you want to invest in yourself in doing this hobby, um, then you should at least like, if not crack open a book, like listen to some people talk about either D&D or listen to them talk about improv and the things that they do to kind of get better in those arenas. I'm not suggesting that every person who's listening to your podcast need to go out and become the next Matt Mercer because like come on, we're all hardworking adults with limited attention spans, and there's only so much you can do to develop these skill sets. But if you're going to spend 4 to 6 hours every other weekend or something like that hanging out with your friends doing a particular task, you might as well get good at it. And I think that that is something that people can kind of tell themselves of like that they essentially don't want to invest in their friends and their relationship and the hobby that they're doing, even though that hobby represents a huge chunk of time to them. I don't uh, I don't understand that mentality. And people someone's more than welcome to explain it to me. Because if I'm like, I don't know, man, like in a month, I probably play about 8 to 12 hours of tabletop role playing games, just through a couple of different, um, my group at Edmond, um, and then you guys, and then whatever else I happen to pick up as spares. So to me, it's important to put my best foot forward on all of it, because like, yeah, I've known you for a short amount of time, Jesse, but I respect you enough to try and give you my best effort. Um,
Back at
and
you.
like, well, and it's recognized because of like how good of a fucking player you are.
Oh,
Um,
thanks.
and that just deepens everything. And I think that that's great. And there's plenty of other arenas, other hobbies people can have that dynamic still plays out. It's kind of, you've only got so many hours in your life. Whatever you're choosing to fill that life with, like try to be good at it, I guess. I don't know. That sounds a little like alpha male, like dude bro Joe Rogan of me, but I mean that is broken clocks can be right twice a day, right? And that is something that those guys get right.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're investing time, grow in skill. It
Yeah.
just makes sense. Well, this has been the Jaunty Mantis. I'm Jesse. I forgot to introduce myself at the beginning of the episode. I've been doing this for 4 years now, so and I'm not getting better at it. But yeah, so I'm with me is Karl, and get out there and play some fucking role-playing games.
Yeah, and make sure you go over to Modifius and you let them know that their system could be better.
My only serious complaint is that the homeworld book is very tiny. It's physically small.
I, you know, I just, I have so much on my mind, and
It
that's
came
okay.
with a
We can
punch
say
sheet of tokens. Very small tokens.
this exactly that, and that's what Modifius does to people. They make punch sheets out of why? Why would we do this?
They make you buy cubic feet of Mutant Chronicles book with incredible discounts when they lose the license. That's what the other thing they do. Anyway,
Unbelievable. Go troll them. I mean, wait, no, don't. Okay, that's not advice, but I'm just saying if you do, I will find it funny.
Mantis out.